Ciao. Welcome to Geriatric Alpha Runt Productions. This is our second podcast, and today we have a friend of mine named Mark Bua, who is a retired law enforcement officer, worked in San Diego for many years. A lot of interesting stuff to talk to him about as far as his career goes. We are going to be splitting this up into 4 sections as usual. We've got 4 different great subjects to talk about, so you can identify what you like and what you wish to listen to and disregard something maybe that isn't of interest to you. So I guess the first thing I would do is just ask you to tell me about what your career was like in San Diego Police, like when you started, what you did there, etc.
Okay, well, thanks for having me on, and congrats on getting your new podcast started. So I, right out of college where we met, I worked in various outside sales jobs and so forth. And, in 2003, the company I was with at the time, Becton Dickinson, selling hospital-based products, had a big restructuring, and my position basically got squeezed out there we go. And I didn't want to relocate anywhere, so I just took the severance and took about 6 months to decide what I really wanted to do. And I was 31 or 32 at the time.
Wow.
Yeah, so
you were older.
A little older. I mean, not by today's standards. That's when most guys are still living with their parents. But
that's the year I got sober, when I was 31 years old, so I know it.
So I decided to just kind of jump in with both feet and apply to various police agencies, and luckily San Diego PD had just been on a hiring freeze for a couple of years, but got, I got hired with them about a year after I had left that previous job, and then the academy, and then getting hired. So,
what does the academy consist of?
Well, they basically go over things that are mandated by the state of California for all sworn peace officers, and that's under a governing body called POST, Peace Officer Standards and Training, which has gotten very politicized over the years. But it, and I actually ended up teaching a lot at the academy after a few years on patrol, continuing to do patrol, but also teaching. At one time, I was teaching 7 different courses at 3 different police academies.
How long does the academy last? What's the academy consist of?
The basic academy, if it's full-time, it's 6 months. If you go part-time, like some working people go to a night academy, and there's only one in San Diego County, Southwestern, actually Palomar too, but that takes a lot longer because you're only going on nights and weekends.
Okay, and then when you're join the academy, do they hire you on as a full-time employee with like benefits and a salary and all that? Or?
Well, I was actually an open enrollee. I enrolled at the police academy on my own dime, and then got hired by San Diego PD shortly after. So, but they do pay you an academy rate when you're going
So
through.
What does like the first day of being a real police officer consist of? You get a partner in a car, and you get a beat, or what is that?
Well, at least when we went through 4 months of what's called phase training, where we go with a field training officer, FTO, and they pretty much we just learn on the job, because they started doing what's called a shadow phase too, because they realized that what the academy was teaching wasn't translating real well to preparing people to get out there in the field, because there's a lot of multitasking, a lot of listening to call signs, things like that really took a lot of time to get used to. So over time they added a 5th phase that's called the shadow phase before you start actually doing the work with your FTO.
So where did you spend the majority of your time then when you were actively involved
on patrol? Yeah, in Northern Division, which covered the Mission Beach, PB, La Jolla, all the way up to UCSD, basically along the coast.
So I have to tell our listeners a quick story. I was actually in San Diego probably quite a long time ago, maybe 20 years ago now. And very much an adult, though. This is way after college. And Mark was able to pick me up in Pacific Beach at the hotel I was at, and took me around for a couple hours on a guest ride in Pacific Beach, ride along. And it was really an experience, because not only did I spend years and years post-college partying in that Garnett district down there, But to see the way that people react to the police car, and then he was driving us down the actual boardwalk where cars don't go, and watching the people scatter, and seeing just the way people reacted to seeing a police car was really interesting. So I thought that was fun.
Okay.
I remember also seeing you in one of those videos that kind of went viral where you were like ran up on somebody with your gun drawn and it made the news.
Yeah, yeah.
What was that? A quick story on that. Why was that?
Yeah, there was a guy. I still remember his name was Sam Suleiman, and he was a real estate investor, con man who this reporter for Fox, the Fox affiliate in San Diego, was doing a story on his shenanigans, ripping people off, building without permits, things like that, and somehow this guy got wind that he was interviewing people and showed up on scene and attacked the reporter. And over the radio, we're hearing things like she's going, and his wife actually is the one that called him because she saw what was going on. So it was a big melee with people getting beat up. And
That's kind of what I remember. It was just chaos. And
I still remember, hearing it. It was like, okay, so she's got a rock in her hand. Now she put the rock down. She says she's going to get a gun. And right when we hear that, we have to go lights and siren. I'm on the other side of Torrey Pines Road, going the opposite direction, lights and sirens, slowly, not like fast because you got cars coming up on you, to address this. And we get there and we don't know who's who. We see guys wrestling, and I don't know if they're wrestling for a gun or where it was, but basically just proned people out and took the guy into custody who attacked him and got witness statements. And I remember it because I couldn't stay too long because I was hosting my fantasy football draft that night, and I'm like, hey Sarge, I gotta cut early. I not early, but on time, because I gotta host all these guys for my fantasy football draft.
so how long do you have to work within the PD before you can retire? Because you seemed awfully young just to my blind eye to be retired. So how does that work?
I had a lower back injury that it kept reoccurring, and my lower disc degeneration was very apparent, and so I took an early medical retirement, which has a lot of tax benefits, and I could have tried to stick it out, but I would have just been, who knows what would have happened with my lower back, but also just the tax benefits of a medical retirement over staying a few more years till I was 50 or 55 would have just kind of it wouldn't have been worth it. So.
And now it has allowed you to go out and do some other stuff. That's one of the subjects we'll be talking about later on is the eBay. So I guess one of the questions that I just wanted to ask you was, I assume that with that background then in policing, that's how you decided to start your company here in Texas when you moved here. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, I remember probably about 10, 12 years ago when we started seeing a lot of unrest with the Michael Brown shooting, and then George Floyd, and some of these other incidents that were becoming very, people were getting scared of what was out there, living in urban areas. And I started getting calls from people that I was kind of surprised that they would want to talk to me about buying firearms or soliciting my advice on certain protective measures they could take at their home in person. And I started working, basically helping out a lot of people that wanted to purchase firearms, and it evolved into a lot of other things, working with getting referrals to wealthier clients who have, threat assessments, or have to have threats assessed, and, see and basically kind of assess their inner circle sometimes to see if there's any vulnerabilities that they could be providing their employees with opportunities to rip them off, things like that. So, or shake them down for money, or blackmail them, do all kinds of things. So that's where it sort of evolved to over time. And I don't do it full time per se.
So it's not like protective and bodyguarding. It's more investigating that you're doing, though?
Yeah, I will. Like when people want to travel, I will do. I will look at anything that might be problematic on their route. Areas to watch for or to avoid, and give them advice, especially in other countries. Just little things like not to be flashy with your jewelry, things like that, where people just don't think about that. They want to post their whole life on Instagram, so they wear all their nice, expensive jewelry to places like Mexico, and then next thing you know, they're being held up at gunpoint.
Well, it's almost interesting that you say that because obviously part of this whole channel that I've developed and what I've been doing here is because of this place that we've put together, showcasing sports memorabilia and my hobby. And, you know, there's a lot of trepidation about letting people see some of this stuff and where it's at, and then talking about cars. And, you know, just want people to know not only is there alarms and cameras and all those things in service here, but there's people that live here, and we carry guns, and like, you know, this is Texas. I think that's kind of a good segue since we're both from California and you spent all your time as a police officer in California, the gun laws here being different. Why don't you just, I guess I should also say that Mark is the one who helped me purchase my guns. I had done a segment on guns with a previous guest in the first podcast. We talked a lot about guns, and you being a gun expert as well. So tell us just about the gun laws here in Texas and general.
What laws? I'm just kidding. No, yeah, basically it's very user friendly, to put it lightly, and that is, you know, there's concealed carry, and I honestly think that when people have an inkling that other people might be armed, they're probably going to behave better, and you don't, and if you look at in a nutshell, if you look at these cities with the most strict gun control, like Chicago and New York, places like that, DC, they have the highest gun crime rate in all the U.S. And it's controlling gun ownership in these cities is not solving anything. It's just creating an environment for bad guys to take advantage of good people.
Well, I think that if we just apply an iota of common sense and said that we want to take guns away, the only people who are going to give them back are the good guys.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. If you ask for guns, the only people who are going to give them to you are the non-criminals. So, it's just kind of too far past that point.
I see gun-free zone. It's like, oh, really? Yeah, that's going to stop anyone.
Well, and, I think that obviously one of the things that's interesting is that since it is open carry here, you do see people walking around with a gun on their hip. And to Californians, that would be really strange. That would be worth calling the police over. If somebody's walking around with a gun at the mall.
Yeah. Well, there were loopholes people were finding, like this group called Open Carry in California, where they weren't loaded, but they were attached at the hips, and there were things that they were getting around that open carry law by not having them loaded. But that quickly went away because people were just flooding the police with calls saying, "Hey, there's a guy walking around with a gun on his hip."
Yeah.
In fact, it wasn't loaded, and they were just antagonizing.
Interesting.
They're just antagonists, like we see now from the left.
So what do you think in general about law enforcement right now? I mean, it seems like their police are kind of stymied in doing their job. They're not only verbally abused by people, they are afraid to do their job. They're almost impotent in being able to react because they're afraid of the ramifications. So does that opinion resonate with you, or is that?
It is, and I think I go back to the. You remember the shooting of Michael Brown? I think it was in St. Louis. Was that? I think it was.
Not super familiar.
It was before George Floyd, but it was kind of the first major, racial incident or in recent memory. But anyway, so with the shooting of Michael Brown, you had a guy, the officer involved in that, Darren Wilson, who fatally shot Michael Brown in self-defense because he was justified in doing so. You had this mob of witnesses that basically all had the same story that wasn't accurate, and forensic evidence proved that this whole mob of witnesses were lying, and that really made a lot of officers think, myself included, about, hey, this officer did everything right, and because of mob justice, he was still fired. He was still, he was threatened. He can't live a normal life. He couldn't continue to work. There was just no way from a safety standpoint for him and the people he's working around. But also, when Obama sent Eric Holder down there to stir things up, it just created a big frenzy, and they tried to. I think that was the first major issue I remember in recent years to really made a lot of officers kind of, skeptic, a little bit gun shy at times.
Sure, I think that would be a good word for it.
Yeah.
So We're getting close to our time on this subject. Is there anything else that you want to just kind of summate as far as law enforcement or make a message in any way or
No,
anything?
I think this new 30 by 30 initiative where, this was done during the Biden administration of having 30% females on, be in local law enforcement, by the year 2030 is not a good idea. And if you look at, it's something we could go into further, but there really are some real concerns with that and the way they're pushing a lot of people through that just can't handle the job physically.
Yeah, we were hearing that yesterday during the Congress. One of the lady from Hawaii was grilling him because
About
he
the
said
pull-ups.
women aren't capable of doing pull-ups, and it's like, why don't you defend women about real issues? You're worried about women who can't do a pull-up that are trying to be police officers, but yet you can't keep men out of women's bathroom. It's unreal. Anyway, we'll leave that for another subject. We're going to go ahead and wrap up this first of 4-part series with Mark Bua. Tune in for the next one.